Is everybody ready to go? All right. Woo! What we're going to do is just go through and introduce ourselves, maybe get a little background, probably not much, and then we'll throw the floor for questions and let you guys ask what you'd like to hear about what was happening in the good old days. So, my name is Zdybel. I started at Atari in 1979. Is that possibly true? Yeah, April of 1979. And I worked there all the way to 1995 when the Trammell's finally sold the company and shut it down. So I was there for basically all of it. I came a little bit after Nolan Bushnell's time, but I was still there for Wade Tuma, who had a nitrous oxide tank in his office. So yeah, I saw most all of it.
I'm Howard Scott Warshaw. I was at Atari in January of 1981, and then I left in '84 when the Trammells came in and shut down Atari. And I did Yar's Revenge, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and E.T., and Saboteur. I also did Once Upon Atari, the video series. It's the only piece of media ever produced exclusively by people who worked on the 2600. How many of you are familiar with Once Upon Atari? Cool. For those of you who aren't, I will have them available at the autograph sessions, so don't worry about that. But enough chromo. Atari was an amazing thing in my life. It really changed the course of everything. I'm actually finally writing the book I promised to write for years about it. So that'll be out soon, I hope. And it's always great to be back and see all of you here. And anybody who wants to ask me about E.T., it's okay. I'm not ashamed of E.T. I just want to be clear about that.
Hi, I'm Matt Householder. I worked at Atari for 2 years in 83 to 85. I worked on the ColecoVision programming group, so it was an internal development group. I converted Moon Patrol to the ColecoVision. It was not published in the spring of '84 because Atari was losing $1 million a day, and they decided they would shut the company down or find someone to buy it. And they did sell it, or in exchange for debt, convinced Jack Trammell to take it on. And I survived that transition and continued to work for Atari for another year, roughly, and did some of the graphic line draw, polygon primitives in the Atari ST operating system. And then I continued on in the game business. And I'm still in the game business, but I don't make a game that makes enough money to make a living now. But it's still fun. Anyway, some of my highlights were I worked on, my first game was Crow Coin Op in 1983 for Gottlieb back in Chicago. I was a co-programmer and principal designer and chief knucklehead or whatever. So if you have questions about that, you can ask about that. I witnessed Q*bert's development, although I didn't participate. After Atari, I went to Epix, where I was producer, creator, and designer of some of their bigger hits, like World Games, Winter Games, and California Games, which was inspired by my wife's observation that, hey Matt, you should do a game with skateboarding in it. Like, oh my God, yeah, what about
That would be the first ever skateboarding game, huh?
I think it was. I think so.
720 come before that.
Maybe 720 was before that. It had the little joy board. And then...
720, the arcade game.
Yeah, the arcade game. Okay. Oh, yeah, the arcade game. And then I joined Blizzard, ultimately. I was at 3DO. And then for several years where I worked with Ed. And...
We were all at 3DO.
That's
were you at 3DO? All of us? All four of us?
Not at the same time.
Wow. Okay. 3DO was pretty big. I was there. I think I was there for 3 years.
Yeah, I hired Robin and then left.
That's right. Scared the hell out of me. He hired me in his position. I've taken his old job. Where did he go and why?
Anyway, I'll wrap me up real quick. And then went to Blizzard. I produced a lot of the Diablo 2 game. I was producer at Blizzard North. I did a lot of the hiring. I did almost all the hiring for the staff at Blizzard North. Managed the sound department. I discovered Matt Ullman, although this was years prior. He was the musician who did all the music in the original Diablo. I discovered him. And he called me up, and I didn't tell him to get lost. He's a genius. He's still working. I might even see him this weekend. He lives in the area now, Portland. I wrote most of the dialogue in Diablo 2 for the quests, NPC quests. My phone is just going nuts here, sorry. I created the use of the exclamation point as an NPC marker over the head of the NPCs. I invented it like most inventors, and then I stole it from other places. Yeah, anyway, that's another story. And then I worked at Zynga for a while. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, my condolences.
Yeah, I worked for Zynga for a little while. That's a story. And I worked at Disney Interactive, which bought Play-Doh, where I used to work. I did a game for them called Kitchen Scramble at the very end, 2013 Game of the Year for Facebook. Facebook Game of the Year. And then now I do my own thing. Anyway, and now I repair electronics. I'm an electrical engineer, so I repair turntables and stereos and things like that, and early coin ops from the 80s, digital coin ops.
That's interesting. I do repairs also now. I'm a therapist.
Yeah.
Heavy duty wiring there. My name is, I'm anonymous. I worked at Atari. I started January 3rd, 1979, so I predated Rob by a little bit. But unlike these guys, I was on the dark side. I worked in coin op. I had actually 2 stints at Atari. In the first stint, I did Atari Baseball, which used the old Atari football cabinet with the roller balls, and that was a 3-month project. And then I did Battlezone was my second project. Thank you. And then when I came, and then I actually started 2 other projects before I left. One of which made it to production as Star Wars. And the other one did not make it in production. It was a game called when it was finished, it was a game called Fire Beast. It was originally supposed to be Dragon Rider Supern, but they never got the IP for that. And then from there, I did a short stint with Apple Computer and moved from there to 3DO. Oh, actually, no, there's in between my 2 stints at Atari, I formed a company called Vidya, which was eventually bought by Bally and became Sente. This was under Nolan Bushnell had bought the company as part of Chuck E. Cheese and went to Midway Valley as part of the bankruptcy proceedings.
What was the game you did there with the?
I did a
the
bunch
whip
of
and the
games.
snake. What was that game? Wasn't that your game?
Which one? Oh,
Was it
Fire
based on-
or Snake Pit?
Yeah. was it
Yeah,
Indiana
Snake
Jones
Pit
based?
used some of this interesting algorithm I came up with. And there's an interesting story about that to do the snakes. There's an interesting story. Since Firebeast didn't make it, I said, well, I'm not going to let this algorithm go to waste. So we created a game leveraging off of Indiana Jones and his hatred of snakes called Snake Pit for the Sente system. It was, I think, the launch title for it. Lee Actor did most of the programming for that, but I had a hand in a lot of the base algorithms for it. And then I worked as the VP of software at Valley Sente for 5 years and then went back to Atari. After I left Apple, I went to 3DO for a while, and then I went to a company called Silicon Entertainment, which did these NASCAR simulators in stores, full motion platforms with 3 projection monitors. You'd race on actual tracks against other drivers in the place as well. And then moved up to the foothills in California, up closer to Lake Tahoe, where I consulted for quite a number of different companies from doing GameCube software and you know, other platforms, doing some PC stuff. Just did a lot of consulting with different companies after that along the way. And then a couple of years ago, I actually retired, so I don't do this anymore for a living. So that's my quick snapshot, and go into details if you wish.
You don't do it for a living or just aggravation?
Yeah, just relaxation after that.
Questions, folks? What you like to hit? Oh, there we go. The first guy in the front row there.
Matt, could you give us the story behind the unusual graphics for Moon Patrol for ColecoVision? Or the flying...
Yeah, the so-called Map Patrol.
Yeah.
I can give you background on that. Well, I was finishing up the game in March of '84, and there were rumors that Atari was going to stop publishing anything on competing platforms, or anything at all, I guess is what it turned out. But, so I was like hurrying up. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get this in, test it. And because I wanted to get my finishing bonus. I forget how much it was. Some number of thousands of dollars. It was a significant fraction of my annual salary. That's all I recall. A lot of money. So I was in a hurry to get this out, published, signed and sealed. And I basically slapped on this title screen to kind of hurry it up. It was Moon Patrol, just made with giant graphic letters. It wasn't a real nice, beautiful title screen. And the next thing I knew, it was like the word was, oh, you know, it's ready to go, and the manual's done and approved, but we're not going to publish it. And so I quickly took it and modified the graphics to Map Patrol. I took the O and I changed it to a T. I made two of them, and I moved them over there, and I took the N, I made it an A, and moved it there. It's like, okay, now the title screen is Map Patrol, and I quickly typed in some other funny hex, other things like all rights reversed and copyright billions, and stuff like that, just goofy. And then I would personalize each one of these. Oh, and then some of the funny graphics were I had Devo hats in there instead of one of the, because Devo's my favorite bands. I went to Kent State where they went to, wasn't at least one of those like, so I made a Devo hat with Energy Dome for one of the UFOs. And actually, I had intended that to ship with a Devo hat. And then I said, well, I'm going to change some of the other stuff. So I said, okay, I'm going to change the little white two orbiting things. I'm going to change that into a 3-cup brazier. So I did. And I did all the art in the game.
And that predates Total Recall.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Philip K. Dick is one of my favorite writers, so I kind of felt like I was in a Philip K. Dick game. Anyway, Crawl has some Philip K. Dick influence too. It's a little more remote. But anyway, so I put in these weird graphics. Also had, well, there was a little George Jetson's car that would come out. And it was in the original game, point out. And it looked like George Jetson in his little flying car, but I added the little Meet George Jetson, little when he would come out. And that was going to ship. That was going to ship. Like that. Yeah, his boy. And so I actually put that silly, put that silly stuff in and made copies for my friends who I'd worked with, and then I gave out a few, made like 4 or 5 of them, and then I kept one. I kept one because the person I was going to give it to got fired. She was gone. Selma was her name. She was in marketing. She was working on the manual box. So I kept this one that said, Selma Presents Map Patrol. And then, I don't know, maybe I went into too much detail.
All right, we'll take another question.
Definitely more changes to the game than I even thought.
Gentleman in the back corner.
I got two. One very simple. Howard, I was always wondered how is it that you came on to the AVGN movie for ET. I was always wondering how James managed to get on to that. Can you answer?
How did I get involved in the AVGN movie?
Yeah.
Well, it was a dark and stormy night. What happened was they were working on the movie, and they decided they wanted to try and actually use me as a character. So they sent me the script, and I looked at the script and I thought, this is never going to see the light of day, so sure, I'll participate. Except originally, the character of Xandor, who's like the eccentric, crazy guy who lives out in the desert, that was me. And so, and I was just becoming a therapist at the time. And I thought, but maybe it will see the light of day. And so I really didn't want to be portrayed as a total crackpot living out in the desert, because that's not the kind of clientele I'm actually looking for. So I talked with them, and actually they rewrote the script. I said, why don't you make someone else and we'll make it a multi-layer thing. So they created that other character, and then I show up as like the sage character, like the Yoda who comes in and gives them some guidance on the way out. And that was better for me, and it was better for them. And that was really cool. And then they flew me out to the Santa Clarita, I think, in Southern California, where they were shooting it. Because it's a very outer space-like looking place. And what was interesting was, though, that the dialogue that I had in the movie was me saying that, yes, there are all these ET cards buried. And that was the first time I had ever said the cards were buried, because I always denied that the cards were there. I never thought it made any sense that the cards were actually buried somewhere. So that was the first time I ever said it, and it was interesting because then subsequently I was in Atari Game Over, where they did the thing where they actually went to pursue. How many of you have seen Atari Game Over? Okay, that was a fun movie. That was fun to be in that movie. That was even more fun than the AVGN movie, but because I got to do more stuff. But and so I always told Nerd that it's interesting. He was the one who made me. That was the first time I ever actually said something that was true about the Atari dig, and it was total fiction at that point. So that's how it came. They contacted me, sent me the script. We talked about it back and forth, and I was just really honored that they actually wanted to do it. I thought it was one of the only fresh takes on it. I mean, people have speculated about E.T. all kinds of. It was the first time in like 30 years I heard a fresh take on what's the story with E.T. And I thought it was really fun, so went for it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and the second one was, for all of you, like, what was the creative process of making like a new game? Like, how did you start to go getting an idea?
That's the easy part.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That for me, that was always the easy part. I used to have dozens of game ideas that I wanted to do. The problem is, you look at these ideas and you go, oh yeah, on the 2600, that's going to work.
I guess that's the thing, is finding a game concept in context. The way I would start it was, instead of thinking of a game concept and then try to do it, I would just look at what I could do. I would think of things I could do on the 2600 and then say, what kind of a game could I make out of that? E.T. was an unusual situation because with E.T. the design problem was not make a game. The design problem was make anything you can do in 5 weeks. And that's a design problem. So instead of designing a full video game for the 2600, I tried to design something I could actually get done in 5 weeks, which was a whole different design problem, but it is an interesting thing. You know, how do you get ideas?
Yeah, an example from me in that case would be, I was working at Epix in my second stint after they'd gone bankrupt following the Lynx debacle. We were doing a game called, well, it was going to be a set of games for laptop computers, which were basically black and white laptops at that time. So all of our art was going to be black and white. I mean, stark black and white, not even grayscale, just black and white. And we were doing a pack of games, and I was the producer designer on it. It was called, what the heck was the name of the game? I can't remember. But it was a set of six games. I worked on several of them. One of them was a game. I said, well, I've got black and white. What's black and white? Oh, dice. Dice are black and white. I'll make a game with dice. As my graphic image. Like, okay, what was the game? And I'm driving to work one day. I remember this. Driving down 280, coming down 380, heading down to Rapid City, and up in the sky, I kind of have this vision of dice falling and lining up in the sky and touching one another. They're kind of like a Tetris. I mean, Tetris was in my mind. And I said, well, and then when these dice touch, if they're the same number, or if they're a run, like 3, 4, 5, kind of like a Yahtzee idea, either they're 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, or runs or series, 3 of a kind, 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, then they'll like explode, pop, 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 and the more will come down and they'll line up and continue to generate. And it was basically, it was like a prototype for the match 3 game, like Candy Crush Saga that we have now, but I didn't realize at the time, but it's a very prototypical idea, but it was driven by, okay, all you've got is black and white. And it's kind of, yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I think your point about, especially in the consumer world, a lot of the game design decisions are driven by the restrictions that the hardware platform provides for you. So that's definitely different than, the side I came from, the coin-op, and our design process was different as well. We had to get because we were committing more than one programmer on a console to a game, to do a game, we had usually teams of anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 people. You pretty much had to get an approval of whatever your design was. So there was an approval process. We also had brainstorming sessions, which was putting together a library of concepts that were approved that you could go to and choose as a starting point for a game. The brainstorming sessions, there were a certain subset of the engineers and artists invited, and artists came later. They were not there at the start. And we also, on the coin-op side, started with black and white. But quite often we would say, gee, we could do that game, but we just need a little, and we got a hardware engineer, you say, I need this feature, and you add it. So it was a lot different than what these guys had to go through with a very fixed platform and creating ways, inventing new ways to stretch it that had never been considered before. And that's really one of the beauties of the old VCS and Nintendo systems and everything like that, was how to stretch what you have to make it appear like it's a much more powerful system. Some of that went on in coin-op too. I mean, you were always trying to push whatever platform you wound up with to make it look like it was way more capable than it actually was. It's part of the trick there. But I have, while I've got the floor here for a second, I have a question for all of you that's semi-related to this. How many of you have read the book Ready Player One? Read the book?
Wow.
How many of you have seen the movie? Okay, now just for those of you who did both, and just for those of you who read the book first, how many of you liked the book better than the movie? Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
All right, what else? Okay, you there, and then the black one. We'll get on this side of the room.
So my question is more on the work culture, work environment as Atari was about to be sold to the terminals. So I guess, from an engineer's point of view, you're there in the trenches doing your best technical work in an environment which is really just falling down on you. So I can only imagine there must have been like a sense of, helplessness. Come on, why doesn't management do something here to save the company? And then all of a sudden, there comes this person that has this, let's say, reputation that preceded him, which, the writing was on the wall that it was going to be really tough, but at the same time, it's somebody who had established Commodore into what it was. Okay. So, I mean, what were the conflicts in your mind about, what's
That's kind of a big question.
Happening here, what was the sense of hope?
Okay, so number one, as an employee at Atari, as it was going down in flames, all right, you didn't really give a damn. I mean, you had your head down, you were doing projects, you didn't really care about the company's financials. You basically cared if you're going to get your shipping bonus. Yeah. That's about all. It's a job, and you were doing it. So there wasn't a lot of angst. Now, when the company actually was sold, it was like, oh, what's going to happen? And Landon Dyer famously announced when the Trammels entered the building in Milpitas, Imperial stormtroopers have entered the building. Over the company-wide PAs, it was still there. They heard it too. So, and then there was some uncertainty, and immediately they came in and they laid off huge numbers of people. Now, to be honest, a lot of the people they got rid of were dead wood. They got rid of some good programmers too, along with it. But that company had gotten very, very fat and very lazy. And so a lot of what they did was good. And then time came to work with the Trammels, and it turns out they were actually some of the best employers I've ever worked for, despite the reputation that preceded Jack. Because unlike most of the business is very much like the entertainment business, okay? It's what have you done for me today? I don't care how your big hit, your last hit was, you know, what else you got for me, kid? Trammels were never like that. Once you had established yourself as an excellent programmer or someone who could make good money for the company, you were basically a made man. And you were part of the family now. And they took care of you and looked at it. I'll give you an example. My best game probably was Warbirds for the Lynx. I'm really proud of that work. And I wanted to do that game really bad, but the guy who was in charge of marketing did not want me to do that game. He wanted me to do Ninja Gaiden, like a rip-off of the side-scrolling, and I don't even play those kind of games. I hate them. So, you know, and I'm like, I've got this great idea, and then Leonard Trammel's there, and the other guy's saying it's a no-brainer, it's a no-brainer, you can do a Ninja Gaiden, and then you can do whatever stupid thing you want to do. And Leonard pipes up finally and says, if it's such a no-brainer, why don't you do it, asshole? And this guy is so clueless. He turns to me and says, see, your boss wants you to do it. And Leonard says, no, I'm talking to you, Squid Brain. So, you know, because of that, I was allowed to do my game. And so I'll be grateful for that. And that was just the kind of attitude they had. Now, Matt also lived through that translation.
Yeah, I did. Pardon me?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Don't need to get Howard on that, but yeah, I survived the transition. I think it went from 3,000 to 300, something like that in one day. A lot of people walking out of buildings.
Carrying stuff.
Carrying stuff.
It looked like an ant colony disturbed.
I was happy to be staying. I was like, well, this is something new. It's cool. It's dynamic. It's exciting. This is fun. You know, it's a game business. And it's entertainment. But I do recall, you know, not knowing what I was going to work on and being told, oh yeah, we're going to do this new computer. And it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I was excited about that. So, you know, unfortunately for me, I mean, the Trammels are really good to me. I'll say that. I was not always polite. I was kind of a jerk at times to some of them. I mean, maybe
Even to me.
maybe even to Rod. I don't know. But they were all, you know, I remember showing up once in Las Vegas and the Trammels got his hotel rooms. The employees on just showed up and said, you know, I did my work on the ST, so why aren't I here at the unveiling of the ST at CBS? Where's my hotel room? They scrambled and got me a hotel room.
Okay, wait a minute. You want to talk about the unveiling of the CES ST? That's a fun story. They put us up, actually, those of us who traveled there, for the first time. Normally, engineers go to the CES, and it's like just a party. You know, we give you a hotel room, you're going to get a free meal, you're going to wander the floor, you're going to see what your fellow wizards are doing, that's it. Trammels said booth duty. And you're going to wear the sweater, this ugly red sweater, and you got to have black shoes. I had to go borrow shoes from my dad. So, you know, we're working the damn floor. People don't believe there's anything. You know, we actually have running machines in a box, and they're like, is there a PDP in there, I believe, you know? It was hellacious. So they put us up at this terrible hotel. The hotel was actually condemned and torn down several weeks after we left. The floor below us, you went down 2 or 3 floors, they were all being fumigated. So, you know.
Well, I got much better treatment than that because I just showed up and said, find me a room. So what we did was Mike Schmall and I, Mike was had come with the Trammels, and was my good roommate buddy. Mike said, this is bullshit, we're not staying there. We walked over to the Caesars where Leonard was staying, and we walked into his room and said, hi, you got roomies. Well, I remember other things about the work environment, real quickly. Jack did not like the candy machines or the free coffee. So he got rid of that immediately. The coffee was gotten rid of, free coffee was gotten rid of immediately. And the candy machine operator was ejected shortly. But what happened is people would, like Dave Stogis, I remember,
Dave
became a
Stogis.
candy vendor. The candy vendor.
Wait, stop. Before that, there was the Coca-Cola conspiracy, and that was me and Mike Schmall. And we would go down to Fry's, and we would literally buy cases of
Okay.
Coca-Cola, and we'd sell them at cost, basically, just to cover our costs.
Joe Jones?
That's what Costco
Dave was
does.
not that one. When Dave saw that, we were doing a good business, he set up a business, he had a big table with all sorts of candy. He was making money.
Yeah. I bought candy bars.
No Joe Cola? That was like the.
Well, I want to come back to the question, which was, what happened leading up to the Trammell? Because when I was there, it was, Rob Bennett, first of all, I didn't even know Ed Wood worked at the company. So to find out Ed Wood was laid off, that's news to me, right there. Oh, Deadwood, I'm sorry, I get confused. But, a long time ago.
He'll be here all night, folks. I'm burying him.
The thing is, it was, the real principle and operation leading up to the actual sale of the company in the tech part was denied. Okay, because this was an amazing thing that was going on. And to the idea that it would end, I wasn't prepared for that. I was not ready to stop having this amazing dream that was happening. That was truly remarkable. You could see it was happening. You could see things weren't going well by like late '83, certainly. And into '84, you could tell something didn't look good because, was it Morgan came, they got rid of Kazar in '83, and the company went from 10,000 people, I think it was down to 2,000. Then when Trammell came in, it went from 2,000 to 200. That was a real, and we were all still there. But it was clear that Trammell's didn't want to really do a game. And I remember the day where I really saw the difference of what was going on was Trammell came in and interviewed everybody, right? He called in each one of the programmers, he would interview them. When I went in to talk to Trammell, to Jack Trammell, he says to me, so, what's going on? He goes, what do you do? And I talked to him a little, and he goes, so you married? And I go, well, yeah, I happen to be married to another woman who worked in the software library there then. And so I told him about that, and he goes, what? What do you mean she works? And I said, she works, she has a job, it's a good thing. And he goes, your wife should be at home with your slippers for you when you get home in the evening. And he's telling me, like, what's wrong with you? And I thought to myself, I don't think this guy wants to do games. I don't know what he wants to do. But it was very clear to me early on that Trammell was not interested in producing games the way we had been approaching games. So I kind of bowed out shortly thereafter once I had that picture. But I will never forget that. No, she should be there with your slippers. And I wanted to say to him, what if you prefer sandals?
Now, Jack bowed out. Okay, let's just ask some more questions. How about you there?
I just was curious, what the true story is about. Apparently there was some controversy about the U.S. Army's interest in battles.
You have the voice of the horse right here.
Yeah, the true story about that, there was a gentleman that worked at Atari named Rick Moncrief. He also worked with him again at Silicon Entertainment. Very bright guy, but if they ever gave him a middle name, it would be Rick Death March Moncrief. He had somehow gotten in touch with some retired Army generals who had a consulting firm, and they were trying to come up with a product for the Army training, and there was they came to him with a suggestion that Atari build a trainer for the new infantry fighting vehicles that were being built for the Army, the Bradley fighting vehicles. And they said, well, the one catch is that, the worldwide TRADOC meeting is going to be in 3 months, and you'd have to have it to show then. And Rick said, oh, yeah, that's not going to be a problem. Then he comes back and he says, Ed, we've got to get this done. We've got to get it done in 3 months. Well, I'm not a particularly into wars and violence. In fact, I left my very first job because we were doing too many Army military things, and I just didn't want to be a part of that. And I don't want to do this, Rick. He says, I've already promised you, you've got to do this. And I said, well, I think it's a bad business for Atari to get into. I've been in other government contract companies, and they start looking over your shoulder for every part of your business, just not what they're interested in. But, you know, if we can come to an agreement that I never have to work on another product for the military here, I'll be happy to do it. Well, I'll do it. I won't be happy to do it. So I basically lost 3 months of my life. I would work about 16 to 18 hours a day. I'd come home, my wife was already in bed. I'd kiss her, you know, when I get home, good night, and go to sleep, wake up, get dressed, kiss her goodbye, and I'd go off to work. And I'd come back for about 3 straight months this went on, and we finished the product in time for that to be done, and I earned my reprieve from any future things. But eventually, fortunately, they realized this really wasn't a business they wanted to get into. There were 2 prototypes made. It was basically a battle zone cabinet with a dial controller to let you dial in the magnification of your view. There was a foot controller for the tractor, because you could actually move your vehicle that way instead of doing this. It used the same controller that eventually wound up actually a more advanced controller, which was stripped down later for the Star Wars game and Road Blasters and such. But it had thumb triggers, finger triggers, and palm triggers, and it was a replica of what's actually in the infantry fighting vehicle, since we're trying to train people on that, right? So there was a whole lot of new code that had to be written, because unlike Battlezone, shells had trajectories. There was a tow missile that had to be implemented, and obviously lots of new graphics for actual enemy type vehicles and friendly type vehicles, so the soldiers could learn the difference between them and recognize them on sight. And that's the story behind it. You know, I was never a fan. I don't have fond memories.
How about you there, last one off the checkered shirt?
Maybe a question
We'll get you in a minute. We'll get you in a minute. Please.
About the links, possibly, Matt, did you have to work with links when you went over to Epics?
I did not work on the links. I left Epics because I had little faith in the links.
Okay.
It was a great piece of hardware.
It was great.
That's what I was wondering.
Dave Needle hardware, man, he was a genius design. I had to work later with the stupid little Nintendo handheld. What a piece of crap. That Needle design would handle 64 freaking sprites and scale them simultaneously. The stupid Nintendo sprites aren't even independent.
My concern with the links was the lack of business planning, and, you know, just generally, you know, wasting a lot of Epics built up war chest on becoming a hardware company and hardware publisher. I didn't see that they were ever going to do it. In fact, they couldn't, and they had to bring in Atari, and Atari couldn't do it.
We actually did it. The problem we
Well,
had
they
was
did
getting
it,
the little color screens from Japan. They actually knifed us in the back on that. Did I answer your question in any way? How about you then? We're running out of time, so let's be quick.
Yeah, this is a question for everyone. Could you just talk about a game feature or a game idea that never saw the light of day that you really wish had?
Well, there's this game, Draconis Rex, I'm thinking of right now. I bet Ed's got it in his pocket. We did I'm very fortunate. Most of my work has actually seen the light of day. There's nothing more frustrating than spending a year of your life producing a game, sinking your heart into it, and then finding out that no one wants to publish it. It's really very heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was a cool game too. It's just the reason it wasn't published had more to do with our president's ego than anything else.
It seemed like there was a number of practical jokers that worked at Atari. Who was the biggest one for practical jokes, would you say? And was it Todd Fry?
Tom wasn't so much a practical joker as a crazy person. He was my office mate for years.
Todd walked that thin line between practical joke and joke.
I would say Owen Rubin was the biggest practical joker, certainly in the coin-op side.
And if you could give an example of, maybe something that happened that was a practical joke that was pretty funny.
Well, practical jokes, we didn't really play a lot of practical.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of that kind of.
There was jokes.
I had one that actually was.
There was the frog.
How about
the frog?
Shortly No, this has nothing to do, this is a practical joke that has nothing to do specifically with the game. I was at Atari for about 6 months when I went back to Chicago, where I'm from, to get married. And when I came back, my office had moved over by one cubicle, and everybody swore that it was not moved. And I knew that it moved, but everybody, no, we moved. And then over, as Rob talked about the PA system, you get pages like, where is number 6? And for those of you who went to the prisoner at all, and all, it was just, and it went on for months before someone finally said, yeah, when we moved your office,
We used to do stuff that was more management focused, like anti-management focused, I should say. Like there was the motto was "We take fun seriously," and we used to refer to that as "We take fun intravenously." And but the classic was the flying the frog. There was when Michel Hebert, I think, was Eberton, was he was a vice president of software at one point. And he was this French guy, and he was not connecting well with the programmers. So at one point, well, you were part of this, right?
Well, yeah, we bought a big tank of helium and those giant plastic frogs in Chinatown, and it says "Kiss Me" on the side. We changed it so it said "Kick Me." Actually, the meanest thing they did to Michelle Eberton is some guys, I think it was the coin-op guys actually, we were right next door to an Apple building, and they stole the sign that said Apple, and they put it right outside his office. And then someone called the police and complained about
Here's another one, real quickly, because we were in a building and Atari was growing and growing and growing and growing, and we had our sales department, our marketing department, and we also had, of course, facilities. The facilities decided outside of 1272, which is where we all worked, that they were going to take the prime parking spot in front. So they marked off facilities parking only. And for about a month, every night someone would go out and paint black over the facilities, and they'd have to come back and paint it up again. They finally gave up.
So we can probably take one more question. You pick. First hand.
Your industry was really new when you started. Did you feel like you were maybe looked down upon by more traditional engineers?
Oh, yeah.
Me?
Like,
Hell yeah.
Yeah, if you were talking to Rob, you were.
Actually, I had a lot of friends who were in the industry, and they mostly felt like video game programming was something for children. What they didn't realize, it was high speed, real time.
Well, do you mean video game programmers were looked down on, or when you entered Atari was a newbie looked down on?
Video game programmers, just like brand new industry, like college.
Oh,
nobody cared. Yeah. We were doing stuff that nobody else was doing at the time. We were working, that group of Atarians, and I worked, as you heard, at a number of other jobs. It was the single most talented, creative group of people I've ever worked with. We really didn't care what anybody thought about us.
But people did think things about us. When I went to talk to other people, when I became a hiring manager at other places, it was very interesting because you talk about people who have been in games, and the thinking around other companies was that games isn't serious, just a bunch of jokers and stuff. The truth was that in most other software disciplines, people were over-specialized, didn't have a lot of breadth, and when you'd have to explain to them, well, the game programmers, they know graphics, they know how to speed program, they know optimization, they know AI, they know all of these different subsystems. They were better rounded people, they were usually much sharper people, someone who had made it in games. There were a lot of people who jumped into games and realized, holy crap, and didn't make it. But people who had been accomplished game programmers were usually very sophisticated programmers, but it's true that around the industry, that was not the belief that was held. And so they were looked down on, to their dismay.
Yeah, that's no longer the case. A lot of my ex-game colleagues, a number that I can count on one hand, are working now in AI systems, per se, self-driving cars. They no longer do game programming. They were recruited by these companies like Google and Uber and whatever to join their AI teams or their high-performance technology software teams.
Well, now the applications developed in
SpaceX.
games moved into other products. So now they're actually looking for people who were in games because those are the people who know, who understand the specializations that are now being used in other kinds of technology. That was not the case for a while.
Yeah, one of my consulting gigs that I did along the way towards the end of my career was to work for a company doing LiDAR systems for autonomous driving systems. So that was, there were a number of ex-game programmers there. They recognized that, hey, these people are well-rounded, as Rob said, or as Howard said, but they're also very self-motivated, which is another issue in programming.
We have to wrap up now, apparently, I'm informed, but we're going to be over in F-150 for autographs and stuff like that.
Bring
So I
your
hope
questions, we're happy to answer.
come and
them.
join us. We'll be happy to talk to you.
That's all we do.
Our voices are not terminated at the end of this interview. Thank you. Thank you very much.